Welcome to Retirement Solutions, the podcast. I'm Tyson Thacker. I am here today with two great women, Jodi Rosko and Heather Fisher. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in just a minute, but I'm excited to have them here today because at B.O.S., we always talk about how to help people get to and through retirement with confidence, with clarity, to make sure that you understand what the next steps look like in retirement. And as we talk about B.O.S., B.O.S stands for Build the Optimal System of Security. And part of building the optimal system of security really boils down to making sure that we understand every part of our retirement life. And one of those things that commonly comes up as part of the B.O.S Retirement Solutions blueprint is, what do I do with my house? You know, you may have spent quite a bit of time living in a particular house, and you decide as you want to get closer to retirement, you're either going to downsize, or you want to build a new home, or you want to do something to change up. Maybe you want to go on a main floor instead of having a multi-floor home to make it easier to live on one level. Whatever that is, that's part of the B.O.S Retirement Blueprint as well. And Jodi and Heather, I want you to introduce yourself a little bit, talk about why you do what you do, and really what your specialty is, because I think that everybody listening today is going to love what we're going to talk about.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We appreciate you having us on today too, Tyson. So thank you for that. So we have a real estate team, and we sell all kinds of real estate. But in 2019, Heather came on board with us, and when she first came, I was like, hey, I have this thought process that we really need to help people who are downsizing, because it's just not the same as when you are, getting a bigger house, and it's just a whole different group of issues that really cause people to be overwhelmed and stay. Don't move when they need to. And so we just kind of started that program. So we have a whole leg of our business that does that now. And we have a Downsizing Roadmap Podcast and all of that, so that, we can just kind of help people overcome any obstacles that they feel like they're having in their thought process around it, and turn it into something that's a positive for them and not something that's a negative.
Yeah, really encouraging people to be dreamy at this stage of life and plan early so they can make that dream happen for their retirement and beyond.
I love that. The dreaming is a big part of what I think we have a common mission in. Is when we sit down with a client for the very first time, we spend about 90 minutes just chatting with them about what their goals look like, and really what their vision of the next 30, 40 years in retirement. And people are living longer than they ever have before. So your home, you want to be someplace that you can build community in, that you can have your family over. In fact, I was just talking to somebody a couple of days ago, and they were telling me they had moved out of our area and had downsized. And then as they retired, they recognized, I've got my kids and my grandkids coming over, and I don't have a spot for them. They wanted to have a area where they could still be able to live, but have a backyard where they could gather. And so they decided to move again. And so they could have used your services to be able to really think through that dream. And so my first question to you is, there's so much equity that's locked up into people's homes right now. They may have, throughout their life, as they've grown their family, also grown the size of their home, and really more equity than almost any time in history. So let's talk for a second. I just gave one simple example, but let's talk for a second about why some people downsize as they get closer to retirement, maybe even some of the pros and cons of that.
Yeah, I think, a lot of times unfortunately, a lot of people wait too long, and they're making that downsizing move due to a crisis, which could be the, passing of one of the couple or a diagnosis. But really the better plan is to be dreamy and make, just because you have a large house now Sometimes it's not the space that you need for your family to come over. Maybe you need that great room and yard for gathering, but you don't need 5 bedrooms. Planning ahead if you want to age in place, making sure that you're in a home that's a ranch or, is feasible if health issues come up, and building that life in that place that will work longer than where you might be. So we see people a lot of times coming when those hurdles have already gotten to that point and things aren't working, and just trying to encourage people to do that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're moving into a smaller house. Sometimes you're moving, right sizing maybe into a same size house.
Yes.
But just it's a different layout and it works better. Maybe it doesn't have stairs. Maybe it doesn't have a huge yard to take care of, or a basement. Depends. Different areas have different things, but sometimes that's what people are doing, and sometimes people are moving into a community like in independent living. Depends on where they are in their journey. But I think that the key for us that we talk about all the time, we have a 5-step program, and the first step is dream it. And I think that's the step that people miss the most. They miss it the most. Is they just go straight into, deciding on, should I keep these things? Should I not keep these things? They're pretty much really overwhelmed. Mostly a lot of overwhelm comes around their stuff and how they have too much stuff to fit into a smaller space. And then that overwhelm can make them, stop. Like that's kind of like, I'll deal with that tomorrow, until tomorrow never comes. And I think between the stuff and also the financial, honestly, is I think a second part where people get overwhelmed because they're unsure. And I think that's really more of a fear of the unknown. And that's why they need to talk to you guys, talk to your financial planner about what that can look like. Because when you start looking, sometimes those numbers might look scary, but maybe you like you said, you can use the equity of your house, and you have ideas on how you can make that work for them and for their future. And I think between those two things, once they can get over those hurdles and really come up with an idea of what they want their future to look like, then they can get started.
Yeah. I want to drill down on both of those things that you just mentioned, Jodi. The first one is the clutter, and I wouldn't call it clutter. I would call it memories, right? It's what you've attached yourself to because, your child played sports and they've got some memorabilia that they wanted to hold on to, or you wanted to hold on to from what they did with sports, or you've got a family legacy of maybe your mom's favorite china or whatever it is. And all of those things, those memories that you collect, how, as part of you taking them through that 5-step process, how do you help them to take those memories and do something appropriate with them?
We have a stat that in our downsizing workshops that the average American home has 300,000 items.
Wow.
And so
no wonder
we're overwhelmed. But I think people get stopped a lot at the front, and none of us are truly attached to 300,000 things, but we don't start at all because we're already jumping ahead to someone wants me to throw all my photo albums away. And people leap right to that instead of, starting with some of the easier things and realizing that there's a lot that doesn't fall into that legacy category. So we always say to start with the easier things, and we give some guidance on what those are and how to attack them. But then when it comes to your family history and your legacy, we talk a lot about how the stuff is only stuff unless it has the story. Some things are just old and you own them, and those are not legacy items. And so whether you're trying to honor your own life and keep the things you love, or honor things that you've gotten from other family members that aren't with you, it's really about curating what represents them and how do you use that in your daily life, or have it somewhere where you're seeing it and enjoying it in your daily life, so that that story lives on and becomes part of the story with your next generation, and becomes an active part of your family, and not just in dusty boxes in the basement or the attic, and getting through that mindset.
Yeah, it's really just totally a change in mindset. It's a
Right.
change in mindset of from accumulating things to really thinking through whether those things are important to you, whether they represent the legacy that you want to leave, and or whether they represent the future that you want to have, right? So we have times in our lives that have different things, like you were talking about the kids and the trophies and all the things, right? But when we go into retirement, we do different things, right? And so we're going to be a little bit different people. And so maybe we can let go of a whole bunch of stuff that comes from the person that we were before, only keeping the things that really are the legacy for us. So it's really a thought process. You really need to think, sit down and think and write some lists and do some things around what you want your future. Maybe you're going to have a new hobby. Maybe you have 10 hobbies that you used to have that you don't do anymore, and you need to let that all go.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you're familiar with the 80-20 rule, but the 80-20
Sure.
rule, it totally applies to the house, right? We really only use 20% of the stuff, and 80% of the stuff we don't. And if you think about that in your clothes closet, you're not washing 100% of your clothes every week, right?
Right. Yeah, it's really it really is true. In fact, Richard Koch is a friend of ours, and who wrote the 80-20 book and really made that more popular. And
Yeah.
there's a couple of things that you said that I really want to drill down on. The first one is you talk about, the first phase of life is accumulating these memories, these legacy items, and really. Then there's what I would call a decumulation phase, and that where you start to move through and declutter. It's the same thing in how we help people to plan for retirement. There's so many people. I remember really well. There was a potential client came in, and they were very, very focused on continuing to accumulate funds. They had accumulated well over $2 million. And it was almost like this trophy, talking about kids' trophies, it was almost their trophy that they had decided that they wanted to hold on to and show everybody, hey, look how great of a job I did. Where people need to recognize when you get to the retirement stage and you start to deaccumulate funds, it's really just a transition into income streams. You've had an income stream your entire life with a paycheck, and now you need to create income streams instead of just, hey, here's this magic number. Whether it's 300,000 items in the house or whether it's $300,000, we need to make sure that we're dealing with these things appropriately. I want to go back for just a second to this concept of we have more equity in homes than ever before. There's really three camps that people fall into when they come and see us. The first camp is they've got a lot of equity and they may want to downsize, and their goal is to have a mortgage-free home. Second one, to get rid of that housing debt, to lower their monthly obligation, so when they have an income stream that it's easier to take care of and have a lower living situation because they don't have a mortgage. Second one would be that they don't have a lot of assets saved, and so they're concerned about continuing on with a mortgage. And we'll talk about that in a second. And a third one is some people like to invest and maybe even not have their own mortgage, but invest in real estate somewhere else and have some equity turn into income generating investments, or really use a home as an annuity of sorts to plan for that phase of life. How do you guys in your program talk about those three scenarios?
A huge number of the people that we deal with, their equity in their house is their main source of what they have left, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So we just talk to them about how are they transferring that wealth, just from the house that they have to the next house, and what is that looking like? Like what you're saying, mortgage free, just kind of what does that look like? But I mean, to be honest, we don't do financial planning. We do, here's what the next house is. So we refer to net financial planning out to for those kind of things.
Yeah, I think looking at that situation is so unique to every person's situation. But I think people, often our clients, have not bought or sold in a very long time. So one thing, that if their equity is transferring from the house that they own to their next place, we always make sure they understand that they're not going to be homeless in that interim, that there are mortgage products and things that can cover that gap while you're selling and finding your next place. And just because it's been so long since they may have bought or sold, sometimes that's the relief they need.
So as we talk about reverse mortgages, one of the things that I love to do is just educate people. It's not something that we necessarily do. We refer them out, but we love to educate people along the entire process, whether it's a reverse mortgage, whether it's anything else within their financial life. So I'm sure you guys have experience with reverse mortgages and what that can mean to somebody as they're looking to downsize.
Yeah, because it's not always that the house is a lower price. So sometimes we can, take the equity, even if we owe a little bit of money still on our current house, and buy a smaller house, and it can potentially be a smaller investment, and then use that money and, own that house free and clear.
Sure.
But sometimes it's not. And especially new builds right now, sometimes those new builds are the same or maybe a little bit more money than their current house. And so that's a mindset thing that they have to let go of too, that they think like, since it's smaller, it should be less money, because that's not necessarily true, because you're getting things that are newer and more current and more updated, and everything is, updated. But we had a builder that was using the reverse mortgage. You would actually buy it with a reverse mortgage, buy those. And so that they could just walk into that and buy it without any money down and taking any money. And then they could use the proceeds of their house to do whatever, invest it, get some kind of a return on their investment, make it some income generating through investments, using it to travel. They could do whatever they wanted to with that money. So that was an interesting concept that builder was using.
Yeah, most people think that they need to use just their home that they currently are in to do a reverse mortgage, when in reality, there is a huge portion of the population who uses it to purchase a new home.
Yes.
And then they have other equity they put a portion down with their equity, and then they, as you mentioned, are able to just use the money in other places as they need it.
Yeah.
So great advice there. I want to pivot now to, usually as you get closer to retirement, the kids have some kind of vested interest in what's going on with their parents, whether, as you mentioned earlier in the program, that they want the parents to live closer, or so that they can have the opportunity to hang out together more. What does this look like from a buy-in with the kids, and making sure that you avoid conflicts and clarify goals together as you're looking at potentially doing this?
Yeah, we've had a couple conversations about this on our podcast, and sometimes those conversations are difficult both ways. Sometimes the parents, are not wanting to downsize. They think they're fine, and the kids are worried, like, we're tired. We're coming over all the time to mow the lawn and this and that. We think you need to make a change. And sometimes it's the other way, that the parents have planned and they know exactly what they want, and they've been dreamy, and they're like, we're ready to go. And you get the adult kids that are like, wait, I grew up in this house. You can't sell it. But I think with anything, early conversation and lots of conversation, and knowing your plan ahead of time, knowing those dreams, maybe knowing the dreams, not the plan, and being ready to have people help you get that plan into place is a much easier conversation than just struggling and not talking about it and conflict comes up more in that situation when everybody's worried, everybody's overwhelmed, and nobody is sure of a plan. So again, just talking early, inviting your adult kids, if you're going to move to a senior living community, inviting them on the tour, or asking them, what questions do you have about our plan? Or, just assuring them that you have gathered information gives everybody a comfort level and makes it easier to get through those stages. And then, when you don't do that and it's a crisis, your kids are the ones going to make decisions for you sometime. So
Yeah, transparency is key, right?
Yeah. And I think clarity too. Like, I think the clarity is the key. You spend some time thinking about what that is that you really want to look at, pros and cons, and spend that time. And some, different families are different. Some families want to talk it all through together. And some parents are like, hey, this is what we're doing. I'm just letting you know. But either way, like, they need that clarity, we either, together to work through what that's going to look like. So we have a picture at the end, or they have the picture and they just share it. Either way, it's the clarity that's the key.
I love it. Yeah. We do the same thing with the B.O.S.S Retirement Blueprint. When we talk about the legacy bucket, it's all about having clarity and transparency with the kids around their entire estate and how that works, and which would include the home. For a lot of people, the primary piece of the estate that's going to get passed on to the kids is the home. And so the kids have a vested interest in that because they recognize that, hey, there may not be a lot left over, but we want to make sure that whomever is involved, whether it's a real estate professional or a retirement planner or whatever the case may be, that everybody is dealing with somebody who's competent and everybody's on the same page. The earlier that people can talk, the better, so that you avoid all of those landmines, is the way that I phrase it.
The earlier that you talk, the more choices you're going to have.
Yes.
As you go down the road, your choices start narrowing down.
And that's why I talk about it from a confidence and clarity standpoint in retirement, is you want somebody to take that step into retirement, and whether it's downsizing or anything else, you've got to have a lot of confidence. And so, yeah, the earlier you have those conversations, we talk to people about, you ought to be talking about retirement at least at the age of somewhere between 50 and 55, because you're exactly right. The earlier those conversations can be had, the earlier that people can make great decisions. We say all the time that when we educate somebody, we love to be able to say, we believe that helping great people make great decisions by giving them options and giving them the opportunity to co-create a plan. And you're doing the same thing with real estate. You're co-creating a real estate plan with them to give them options and that clarity and confidence. I love it. So really quick, and then I want to just wrap this up. How do you look at something, a community, make sure that somebody's not moving into, what are some red flags around somebody who wants to move into a community and you're like, no, there's some red flags here. We need to help you to avoid that.
I think for us, again, there are pieces that we don't do personally. And so Jodi and I's philosophy is knowing all of these hurdles and questions that might come up and having just an army of resources for someone. So we are huge proponents of, there's a lot of people that are local placement people, and their job is to know, every community and every question to ask. And we tour a lot of them just to know, the people working there and in groups we're in, and they're pretty and we see the amenities. And so we encourage people when they're going, when they're making such a big decision, that there's so much beyond just like, oh, that was a nice looking room or apartment.
Right.
There's just a lot of questions to ask. And most importantly, I'm sure as what you deal with is the financial piece. How is this going to work for you now? And is it somewhere where you can stay? Or are you very aware, like, this is not somewhere that if something happens, you might have to move somewhere else because they don't have that full path of care that you might need. And, or your money is not going to last that long. So just making sure that there's a whole team of resources, the financial planners, the placement people, and an elder law attorney, that we've connected with a whole group and be a team together to make sure all the pieces work together.
I love it. Yeah, a team of professionals is so important.
Yeah. The placement, there was, before we started this, there's just so many people out there that can help that I just didn't know were out there at all. And the placement people are free. For the most part, you will find that they do not cost the client at all. They get paid by the places that they're looking at. And so they know where the good care is happening. They know when bad things are happening because they talk to people afterwards, after the placement. They know what's happening.
Jodi and Heather, this has been a really enlightening conversation. Each of you listening today, whether it's you're looking to downsize, whether you're looking to go into a retirement community, whether you're looking to go into an assisted living facility, there are so many important decisions that need to be made up front. And one of the great things about this podcast is we have people all over the country who listen, Jodi and Heather. So give folks the opportunity to connect with you. How do they connect with you and how can you help them?
Yeah, our website is downsizing.roadmap.com. And that's the best place to, get our phone number, our email, our resources that are available, connect with our podcast if you wanted to hear more about your stuff and how to get rid of that and change your mindset. And really, if there's a real estate piece in your downsizing plan, we can help local or in Ohio. And we have a whole network of agents across the country, that we really make sure that they also have that heart for working with, this demographic, seniors and downsizers, and have those resources all across the country.
Thank you so much. Today has been really eye-opening as it relates to everything real estate. We love that that's still part of the B.O.S.S retirement blueprint. And remember, retiring successfully today, it doesn't happen by accident. It starts with a plan. And that plan is the B.O.S.S retirement blueprint. Click on the link below if you would love to understand more, whether it's real estate or whether it's creating an entire plan for you. We would love to help you. Thanks for listening and have a great week, everybody.